Good evening, folks. Silver here. Today's story is a tale of the woods behind a suburban area. Nothing is in the woods, right? Let's find out. Also, before we begin, only a small percentage of you that listen to these stories are subscribed. So, if you end up enjoying this narration, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always unsubscribe later. With that, enjoy the story. I've lived here all my life. This house is a part of a neighborhood built around a densely wooded area. No one's sure how old the woods are, but it hardly matters. The neighborhood kids, myself included, frequently used the woods as a shortcut between each other's houses and hid snacks and stuff inside plastic boxes. I can still show you the way through with a blindfold around my eyes, so long as you tell me where the thorns are. But one day, something changed. I'm never going back in, and I suggest you do the same. One summer evening, my best friend David came running, and this was no lighthearted jog out of the woods, with a girl named Rachel in tow. I lived next to this little girl, and I knew that she had problems with her hearing. As they came closer, I noticed that Rachel's eyelids were half closed. David, upon closer scrutiny, was more dragging her along than running with her. Her feet were dragging along, kicking up all sorts of leaves and other foliage off the forest floor. I think it's good to mention also that David is one of the fastest people I know. He's capable of keeping up with cars through the neighborhood quite easily. This time, however, he was moving faster than I'd ever seen him go, even on a bicycle. They cleared the tree line and came careening towards me, David staggering under the combined pressure of his current speed and Rachel's weight. "What's up with her?" I stated. I was less worried about Rachel than I was the look on David's face. David is a very brave soul, believing that his speed would get him out of the hairiest of situations. But this time, he looked scared out of his wits. "It attacked us," he said. "She fainted, and I could barely get out in time." "Rachel!" It was Kurt, Rachel's older brother. He had a history of bullying everybody he met, including David and me. I shot a look of loathing at him as he approached. "What do you do to her?" Kurt called David, a word which I shan't repeat. David, admirably ignoring the aspersion of his character by Kurt, responded, "Something attacked us." "What, like a bear?" It had been a long-standing point of speculation whether or not any animals bigger than birds and squirrels inhabited the woods. David shook his head. He didn't seem to have the words to say. A long-time theory was that some eternal, immortal creature existed within the woods, and that was the reason for the gunfire that often seemed to report outside of the glade. I was not a supporter of this theory, as things like that didn't exist. "For the last time," I said, losing my cool, "nothing is in the woods." At that moment, Rachel woke up, screaming on David's shoulder. "Nothing! Nothing!" This put me on edge. Normally when Rachel talks, she stutters and it takes a few tries to say something. So to hear her clearly scream this word over and over again, it clearly disturbed me. Kirk picked her up and carried her, thrashing and screaming, into their house. "Look," I said. As the oldest person outside, I was in charge of clearing up any misunderstanding and conflicts. "I'll go in and I'll prove it to you." "No," David said, fear in his eyes. "I'm not going in unprepared. That would be ridiculous," I thought. I went into my house, where everything was incredibly normal. My dad was cooking dinner, my favourite meal, fajitas. My mum was watching TV, which sat in a wooden throne and was turned up ridiculously loud. I went to the tool drawer, and I pulled out a flashlight and a pocket knife discreetly, so Dad wouldn't notice. I went back outside to the group waiting at my entrance to the woods. I instructed David to get home and get some string. His mother cross-stitched as a hobby, so I was certain they'd have plenty. This he did, and he eventually returned with several large spools of thread. I tied the end of the first spool to one of the posts holding my house's deck. "Hold on to this thread," I told David. "When it pulls tight, come and help me." "Okay." I threw myself into the woods, the pocket knife open in my back pocket, and the first string spool pouring loosely out of its plastic holder. I followed the paths I had often beaten through the woods into the heart of the glade. I occasionally had stopped to tie the beginning of a new spool of thread to the old one. This area was a favourite place to hide the bases during summer games of Capture the Flag, so I figured that this creature, if it indeed existed, would want to hide here. Suddenly, my light went off and I was left in the gathering darkness. No matter, I thought, I can move on from here. But the darkness seemed somehow thicker and more viscous than normal, making walking harder. It was as though the night itself was trying to impede my progress, becoming as dense as molasses. As I forged on, or should I say, struggled onwards, the silence was gently broken. A hissing sound, like static from a radio, rhythmically reporting into my head. It wasn't a real sound, it was all in my mind. All the same, it disturbed me. It sounded like someone was saying something quietly through fan blades. I couldn't discern what it was, but I decided to pull the string tight and meet David on my way out of the woods. However, when I pulled on the string, it seemed to have endless give instead of pulling taut through the tree trunks. I continued to pull and still met no resistance. All the while, the static noise. Was it increasing in volume? Eventually, the string came to an end, and the end seemed to have been cut by a blade. The hair on my arms and the back of my neck stood on end. Now I could tell that the static noise was someone shouting one word, but I just couldn't tell what it was. I was almost in pitch blackness now, and I blundered my way through the syrupy shadows to reclaim safety. But I ran into thornvine after thornvine. My clothes were in tatters after half a minute of running, and a hot viscous liquid I knew to be blood was running slowly down my body. Now the screaming static was loud enough to be understood. Nothing. Nothing. Nothing? Nothing. Nothing. That was the word that set Rachel off earlier. It slowly got louder as I stood stock still, having given up on running. Nothing but harm could be given to me by running through more and more of that deep night. The shouting was getting clearer, and dared I think it, closer. Nothing. Nothing. I tried to move again, but the darkness was now like a wall, a light year tall and a universe thick. I could no longer move, but the screaming was still drawing nearer. Nothing. Nothing. I clutched my head, trying to cover my ears futilely to block the sound, when it suddenly stopped. I looked around, as though hoping to see through the black curtains surrounding me on all sides. Nothing. I heard it from behind me, a wet, gurgling parody of human speech. I turned around faster than a top. At this moment, my flashlight began to work again, and I saw what was there. It may haunt me forever. From the waist down, the creature was humanoid in shape, with 2 legs and a set of hips all covered by shorts that were still stained with mud, urine and blood. Its legs looked incredibly normal, tan and hairy thighs that seemed to be well toned, but its torso and head were anything but human. I suppose I would call the rest of this abomination mantis-like in anatomy. It had a skinny thorax for a gut, which widened out to something akin to a chest. In place of arms, it had long thin legs, shaped like scythes blades. Its head was an enormous triangular affair, with eyes protruding from its skull at the sides. Worst of all though, was its mouth, which was simply a gaping hole in its face fronted by a pair of razor-sharp pincers. The whole thing was glistening, with some mucus-like slime dripping off of it. The monster loomed over me, raising one of its arms, ready to dissect me with that blade. But I recalled the knife in my pocket. I pulled the knife out and readied myself for a fight to the death, ducking as I did so to avoid the swishing leg. As this freak of nature tried to rebalance itself after its swing at me, I thrust my knife into the creature's eye. "Nothing!" the abomination screeched, raising its blade arms to its now useless eye. I withdrew my knife from the creature's eye and made a break for it. Now aided with my light, I was able to negotiate my way through the thorns and branches as fast as a fox. But my quarry had its own advantage: its mass. It could break through the trees and thorns without feeling it. I could see the opening to the woods behind my house before me, but I could also feel Nothing's breath on the back of my neck. I turned around and threw my knife, which, miraculously landed in the creature's other eye, blinding it with a splash of gross green liquid. I sprinted pell-mell, with speed to match David's earlier, towards the exit. Nothing was blundering behind me, and the darkness seemed to be amplifying its speed. But I was out, after leaping over a huge bramble. "Nothing!" The being was screaming behind me, but it was blundering away from the entrance. It couldn't hear. David was the only person remaining at the mouth of the woods. He was staring at the entrance and looked amazed to see me barreling out the glade. "Okay," he said. "I believe you." What? Nothing is in the woods.